Well, I think you're right. The nature of nature is changing, and we seem to be centrally caught up in that. The existential or modern view of human beings is that we are somehow have slipped from the control of nature, or were created by God in opposition to nature. And so there's this whole thing about how nature can be plundered and pillaged because it exists for us. It is somehow a thing for us to deal with. But nature is changing, and we are the primary evidence for that. I don't think we've slipped out of control of any of the governors of this planet. I mean, that's taking a lot of pride upon yourself to believe that a bunch of monkeys could truly run against the grain of the planetary destiny. It's rather that we occupy a special niche, a special role in the planetary ecology. We are apparently ourselves catalysts for change. And we tend now, because we have so much of it, to think of this as a bad thing. But perhaps it isn't a bad thing. I was taught when I was studying botany and ecology that before human beings, before the rise of land-clearing, fire-using human beings, the major factor on Earth driving the evolution of plants, the major factor, was the meandering habits of rivers. Because rivers, as they meander, create vast floodplains and sandbars of empty land. And it's into empty land that newly evolving plant species migrate and compete. So before the advent of human beings, it was the land-clearing properties of rivers drove vegetable evolution on this planet. Well, once human beings appeared, then land clearing began on a vast scale, and plant speciation consequently increased apace. Now, granted, the kind of plants that were promoted by this are, from our point of view, aesthetically unsatisfying. It was the geographer Carl Sauer who said, "Man found the world a climaxed rainforest. He will leave it a weedy lot." You see, what happened was that slow-growing annual plants like trees were replaced by rapidly growing, very heavily seeding annual plants. But we have to recall that the appearance of flowering plants, period, is something that has happened very late in the life of the Earth. Concomitant to the appearance of mammals on a large scale come the flowering plants. So we are agents of some kind of planetary change. We always have been. A point Phil made to me at lunch was one of the major reasons for the evolution of pastoralism, the domestication of animals, and then agriculture, was the fact that the hunting had actually become tough work because we had killed off whole populations. And this was very, very early. There was a major paleontological conference held 3 years ago, I think in Toronto, where they concluded that the human impact on Ice Age fauna was immense in the 40,000 to 25,000 year ago period. Well, this is supposedly in the pristine era of ecological balance. People don't realize how long the human impact has been going on the planet. Again, quoting Carl Sauer, or describing his ideas, he believed that there was no such thing as a natural grassland. He believed that every grassland on this planet was an artifact of human burning. and that given the absence of human beings, grasslands cannot arise, that what you get instead are climaxed forest ecologies. He made a pretty good case for that.
What about the herds of gazelles and all those? They wouldn't be bouncing around in a particularly dense forest, would they?
No. It's thought, actually, that, or what Sauer talks about, is that the grassland thing was a kind of management of the ecosystem to produce food. You know, it's said that at the time that the Spanish arrived in California, this was one of the most heavily human-impacted environments on the planet. That the California Indians managed California like a vast system of natural parks, and with yearly burning, all kinds of artificial ways of enhancing the environment. In fact, interesting experiments were done where they went to the very earliest missions in California and obtained permission to take the adobe blocks of these earliest missions, and as you know, straw was used as a binder in the making of adobe. So these scientists would take these very old adobe bricks and they would dissolve them in gentle solutions of acids, and then they would study the straw that was left. Well, they showed that there were over a dozen kinds of cereal grains in California when the Spanish arrived under cultivation by the Indians, that no trace of which now remains. Large kerneled wheat and oat-like plants producing a large amount of nutrition. So human management of the ecosystem, and I think that it's been shown by Sauer and others that you can promote the evolution of grasses, of which all cereals are grasses, simply by repeated burning. You see, Sauer's argument that there were no primary grasslands was based on the fact that every single species that you find in the grasslands, you can also find in the forest at the edge of the grasslands as a minor component of the forest. But there are no truly new species in the grassland. So he said what the grassland is a totally impoverished forest ecology. And it's been impoverished by burning, and repeated burning allows only the annual plants to get a foothold, and they rapidly evolve, therefore, and then through human selection and reseeding, you get this promotion of cereals. And as you know, it was the evolution of rye that allowed human beings to occupy ever more northerly parts of the northern hemisphere, and so forth and so on. So we have always been this catalytic species, always involved in implementing and causing change. It's only in the last 50 years at most that anybody ever noticed this and then asked the question, is it a good thing or not? Because we are romantics. We do have a great nostalgia for Eden, and you touched on this. It's very interesting. If you look at the Genesis story, what this is immediately about is a drug problem. Somebody has a drug and they're telling other people that they shouldn't use it, and the other people are not following the rules and are using the forbidden fruit, and so then they have to be punished. And it's a story about struggle over who gets to use what plants and who has the say-so about it. So we emerge onto the stage of Western culture with out of the Dawn Age with this whole set of complexes about our role in nature, whether we are natural or unnatural, whether we are on the side of the angels or on the side of the gods, and it all revolves around plants and plant use. You know, the Gnostics took the whole myth of Genesis and just turned it on its head. They didn't reject it. they just changed the players and said, obviously, the serpent was a messenger from the true God. And these poor people were imprisoned in the iron fortress of the mad god Ildabuoth. And the higher and hidden Allfather sent in his mercy the serpent to try and turn these people on to the fact that the guy in charge of the garden wasn't God. He was in fact some kind of renegade, some kind of piratical character who should be overthrown. And so they worshiped the snake and glorified that act of rejection of Ildabuoth.